now I'd like to ask for the conclusion Mr. Minister Kourkoulas for the Council.
President, honourable members, the only way to address the important issue raised in this debate is by engaging in a dialogue with the United States. Under the Safe Harbour decision, that responsibility falls to the Commission, and I would press strongly for the Commission to be given sufficient time and confidence to do so. Like this House, the Council will be following closely the Commission's action with regard to the Safe Harbour decision. Many of the concerns that have been raised in the Parliament are valid ones, but we must allow the Commission and the US authorities sufficient time to address these points. In the course of a few months, the Review Group on Intelligence and Communication Technologies set up by President Obama has produced a report. Your Parliament will vote the report of the Libe Committee inquiry. We must now allow adequate time to allow for the most appropriate action to be taken to address the points raised. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. And let me announce the debate is closed. And now we are moving to the next item on our agenda, which is Council and the Commission statement, EU citizenship for sale. Once again, I'd like to Mr. Minister Kourkoulas to take the floor for the Council.
Thank you. As you know well, the year 2013 was designated as a European Year of Citizens and was aimed at raising awareness of the rights and responsibilities that come with EU citizenship. Towards the end of last year, the Council responded to the EU Citizenship Report 2013, drawn up by the Commission. It welcomed the progress achieved in implementing the first report and more generally underlined the importance of the EU citizenship in strengthening EU identity. In general, it is important that we continue to raise awareness of EU citizenship and implement the rights which come with it. This afternoon we have chosen to discuss one particular aspect in relation to EU citizenship, which I know is a matter of concern to many in this Parliament. The preamble of the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights, in establishing the citizenship of the Union, states clearly that the Union places the individual at the heart of its activities. Active participation by EU citizens in the democratic life of the EU, as we will see in particular later this year in the European elections, is just one of the many benefits of citizenship which are already firmly rooted in the treaties and which are elaborated further in the EU secondary law. Given the importance of EU citizenship, any concerns which may exist concerning the acquisition of national citizenship in more Member States must be examined carefully. Our starting point must be the extent and limits of the EU legal framework. The Treaty of Lisbon further strengthened the notion of EU citizenship and the rights that go with it. However, it is important to remind ourselves that EU citizenship is additional to and does not replace national citizenship. This means that every EU citizen has the citizenship of at least one of the 28 Member States. It is a clear principle in the international law that the Member States have the power to lay down the conditions for the acquisition or loss of nationality. This is obviously a principle recognised in EU law, and it has been confirmed in rulings of the European Court of Justice. This means that there is no harmonisation of national legislation in this field. The conditions for acquiring and losing EU citizenship depend directly on the conditions for acquiring and losing the nationality of an individual member state. It follows that the question of whether an individual possesses the nationality of a particular member state can only be answered by referring to the national legislation of that member state. Although EU citizenship depends on member state nationality, it also has an autonomous character stemming from the character of the European legal order. This means that the competence by member states to enact laws concerning national citizenship has to be exercised in accordance with the treaties. Any possible infringement of EU law in relation to member state legislation regarding nationality would be a matter for the Commission rather than the Council. To date, the Council is not aware of any such case of infringement and has certainly not discussed this issue. It is therefore not possible for me to say more about this specific point, other than to underline that Member States must have sufficient trust in each other to recognise mutually different national provisions governing naturalisation. President, honourable members, I cannot contribute more to this debate, given that the Council has no position for the reasons which I have just explained. I will nevertheless listen carefully to the points that will be made this afternoon, and I will report back to the Council. Thank you.
Much, Mr. Minister, and please, Madam Reding, to take the floor for the European Commission.
Honourable members, the Commission is attentive to developments in the Member States which have set up investor schemes for granting citizenship. Recently, our attention was mostly drawn to the Maltese investor scheme. Now, there is no doubt, and the Council has said it very clearly, that the conditions for obtaining and forfeiting national citizenship are regulated by national law, by the national law of each Member State. There is also no doubt that granting the nationality of a Member State means also granting the EU citizenship and the rights attached to this. These are rights which can be exercised and must be recognised all over the Union. That means you give the citizenship in one country and 28 countries have to recognise the rights which go with it. In other words, awarding nationality and citizenship to a person gives this person rights vis-à-vis 27 other Member States than the one in which it has been granted. And as a matter of fact, since the Treaty of Maastricht, granting Member State citizenship also means granting EU citizenship. And this means granting a series of additional EU rights: the right to move, to reside freely within the EU territory, the right to work, to stand as a candidate in the European and municipal elections in the Member State of residence, the right to consular protection, the right to benefit from many achievements of the single market. As a consequence, naturalisation decisions taken by one Member State are not neutral with regard to other Member States or to the EU as a whole. So national citizenship is an entry door to the EU. It is an entry door to the EU Treaty and to the rights EU citizens enjoy. So, ladies and gentlemen, a passport is not only a paper or an official document. It conveys rights and obligations both to citizens and to Member States of the Union. And that is why Member States should use their prerogatives to award citizenship in the spirit of sincere cooperation as stipulated by the EU treaties. In compliance with the criterion used under the public international law, Member States should only award citizenship to persons where there is a genuine link or a genuine connection to the country in question. So, in general, let me raise the question, do we like the idea of selling the rights provided by the EU treaties? My answer is certainly not. Citizenship must not be up for sale. We have been celebrating, as the Presidency just said, the European Year of Citizens 2013 in order to mark the 20th anniversary of European citizenship. And in this context, it is legitimate to question whether EU citizenship rights should merely depend on the size of someone's wallet or bank account. I am not calling for the Commission to receive the extension of its legal power to determine what constitutes nationality or the rules granting it. The Commission nevertheless expects from the Member States that they act in full awareness of the consequence of their decisions. And our debate today shows the growing importance of these questions in a European Union where national decisions are in many instances not neutral vis-à-vis other Member States and the EU as a whole. And it is a fact that the principle of sincere cooperation, which is inscribed in the EU treaties, Article 4.3 of the Treaty of the European Union, should lead Member States to take account of the impact of decisions they take in the field of nationalities on other Member States and on the Union as a whole. And that is why the Commission follows any developments concerning the citizenship in the Member States very narrowly. Citizenship has been very much in the centre of our discussions over the last years. In the context of the European Year of Citizenship, in the run-up to the European Parliament elections, and more generally in all our work to reconnect our European citizens to the democratic life of the EU. And that is why I sincerely say here and now, citizenship cannot be taken lightly. It is a fundamental element of our Union and, honourable members, one cannot put a price tag on it.
Köszönöm szépen.
Thank you very much. And now, on behalf of the political groups, I shall call the next speakers. First of all, I give the floor, on behalf of the European People's Party, to Mr. Weber.
Herr Präsident, Frau Vizepräsidentin,
Mr. President, Madam Vice President, President in Office, Commissioner Reding has spoken very clearly. If only Council did too on these issues. Legally, clearly, citizenship law is a member state prerogative. But with the Treaty of Maastricht and the Treaty of Lisbon, we have EU citizenship. And I would ask Council to have this issue discussed. If there is no opinion in Council, one should be formed. We're not talking about this in theory, we're talking very practically about the Malta case. And it's a very clear case. It's incomprehensible that there can be draft legislation on the purchase of state citizenship. Citizenship is something that cannot be bought. It's about tradition, it's about belonging to a state. The approach by Malta is wrong. And many other member states in the debate have different rules. The original Maltese proposal allowed for citizenship to be obtained without the applicant even setting foot in Malta. The European People's Party is clear in its demands. We want the legislation to be abolished. The government should take up the opposition's outstretched hand. And I appeal to the citizens of Malta, too. Malta is a great country. Malta has a high level of civil rights obtained over decades. You have a great history. Maltese citizenship is valuable. You can be proud to be Maltese and European. I appeal to the people of Malta, tell your government that Maltese citizenship cannot be bought, and stop this legislation.
Thank you very much. And now, on behalf of the Socialist Group, I call Mrs. Guntz for 3 minutes. Thank you very much, President. Madam Commissioner, I welcome your clear statement, and I also welcome the fact that we're having this debate today. This is an opportunity for us to give some thought to the relationship between national citizenship and European citizenship. It's also an opportunity for us to show our commitment to European values. Throughout Europe now we've seen incidents that call our fundamental values into question. These may be the outcome of the crisis, but if we don't pay attention to them in good time, we may well be undermining the very construct of Europe. One of the most fundamental achievements of the EU is union citizenship. It includes the right to vote, the right to be elected, consular protection, freedom of movement, and so on and so forth. And indeed, I would draw your attention to the Financial Times, which has a readership of 2.2 million. On Monday, there was an advert placed in the FT from a company that was offering services to help acquire citizenship or residence permits, presumably for good money. A lot of countries now see an opportunity to make money from European citizenship or residence permits. They are selling these entitlements directly or indirectly, and there's a kind of competition going on with a downward spiral. And the basic principle is one that we seem to be forgetting, the fact that there should be a direct link between the country and the citizenship of that country. There are also governments that are not expecting material benefits from selling citizenship, but rather political benefits. Now, the treaties have said that residency and citizenship is a matter for the national remit, for our member states. But, like in many other cases, this kind of thing can also give rise to problems at a union level. It has an impact on the trust that exists between member states, on the external relations of the union. It can also have a direct impact on other member states because of the principle of freedom of residence and free movement within Schengen. Now, the wealthiest seem to be getting privileged treatment. They can acquire citizenship. That's not fair. It's not just. It's just a new form of inequality. Europe has a tendency to keep at arm's length anyone that doesn't bring a direct benefit to the Union. And also, if you look at the Mediterranean region, you'll find that the EU is leaving in the lurch those refugees who, for want of money, are taking serious risks just to come to this Union. What's our response as Member States and as a Union? I call upon the Commission to act in the spirit of our EU values. Please take a close look at Member States' various programmes which allow for the direct or indirect sale of residence permits or EU citizenship for money or in exchange for investments. And please issue some recommendations which may later serve as a blueprint for a policy in this area. Thank you. The next speaker is Mr. Mulder on behalf of the Liberals Group.
Thank you, President. Earlier this afternoon, we held a debate in the Chamber on the free movement of people. That's an extremely important point in the European Union. Anyone who holds the citizenship of one of the EU member states can move freely throughout them and reside there. That's one of the freedoms we hold dear in the European Union. The prerogative to grant citizenship lies in the hands of a member state. No one is going to call that into question. The whole point at stake here, though, is that Malta, but other countries too, are interpreting citizenship in a way which does give rise to questions. Citizenship is surely something that should not be up for sale. It will depend on the individual's personal links with the country, his or her relations with the citizens of that country, You can think of quite a number of arguments for or against citizenship, but there must be a link with the country. Just selling citizenship to someone who's never set foot on it, in my opinion, is clearly a mistaken approach. Malta is the most recent example. There are examples in other countries, however, and they can all be read in various ways. I think a clear distinction must be drawn between citizenship and residence permits for a particular country. There's a lot of confusion surrounding all this. There's a growing trend here to sell particular privileges. The response from the Commission, judging from the Commissioner's introduction, is a strong approach as far as I'm concerned, but I think we need to set it out in black and white. We need clear guidelines for the Member States regarding what we regard as acceptable in the European Union and what we think is unacceptable, to make it quite inconceivable that European citizenship be offered for sale. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker on behalf of the Conservatives is Mr. Zile.
Thank you, President. Clearly, the European Union is not going through the best time as far as its economy is concerned. There's a means here you can use to improve your economy. Up until 2010, European Union member states weren't selling residence permits to encourage the purchase of real estate, but that is happening now. This happened in Latvia after 2010 and later on in Spain and Portugal too. There are a number of countries who are keen to use this possibility. In Latvia, in just a year, there have been 10 times more of these residence permits granted than in the United Kingdom, where there's a high amount of foreign investment. The sale of residence permits in exchange for investment is something that this House should be addressing. I welcome this debate. This instance of Malta, it involves private companies. Yes, of course, member states have the right to amend their own citizenship legislation, but at the same time we must remember that one of the basic freedoms of the European Union is the freedom of movement of people. That's been built up over decades. And I wonder whether we feel certain that all this money that comes into the European Union via these means is actually clean. Might it not in some instances come from somewhat murky sources? In the European Union, perhaps we don't see that. It's like buying a ticket to an expensive museum. Member states have to decide who's more faithful to the European Union, their own citizens or these people buying in.
Thank you very much. And now, on behalf of the left, I call Mrs. Vergia.
J'ai 1 minute 30, Monsieur le Président.
Minute and a half, is that right?
Merci.
Thank you. So what is it we're debating today? The practices of certain member states who are selling off citizenship and work permits for hundreds of thousands of euro. The member states say this is to promote investment and to plug budget holes. This is absolutely unacceptable, especially from the member states who tend to lecture others. This is a means of circumventing rules, and it's a way of hiding money laundering. We're hearing crocodile tears about we're seeing crocodile tears over the deaths in the Mediterranean. It is absolutely disgusting, if you believe in freedom and solidarity, to hear this idea of buying citizenship. The problem is not citizenship, it's the fundamental values the EU is supposed to be built on, but which it actually flouts itself day in, day out.
Thank you very much. And now, on behalf of the EFD, I call Mr. Messerschmidt. Thank you very much. Thank you, President. Becoming the citizen of a country means joining a family. You become a family member. The host family, if you like, welcomes you with open arms. It's a declaration of confidence, of trust. You're good enough, you now belong. It's not something that you can sell. It is not for sale. And this is what we're seeing right now in Malta and elsewhere. I also believe in national sovereignty. I'm not going to tell the Maltese what they should or should not do, but what I would like to say is that this particular case shows how dangerous it is and how erroneous it is and how unmanageable it is to actually have a European citizenship and to try to remove any differences between our different nations, conferring the same rights on everyone. Residency permits, social rights, and so on and so forth. The list is long. We are seeing rights which are being sold. Take the example of Malta, and take a look at the Commission. The Commission, if you like, is the seller. You're the initiator. You're actually aiding and abetting. And I understand that Mrs. Redding may have left the chamber. I can understand why. Thank you very much, says the President. Now for the non-attached, Mr. van der Stop.
Thank you, President. This is starting to become a rather ridiculous spectacle. Here we have the European Parliament once again convening a meeting on something that's none of its business. This Parliament seems to think for countries to use their sovereign right to grant passports to whoever they see fit. This is the world being turned on its head. More than that, it's the whole universe being turned on its head, President. Of course, it's all the fault of the Schengen Treaty. Without that, this issue would never have arisen. Parliament is addressing a so-called problem that it, thank goodness, cannot solve. It should deal with the problems it is in a position to solve. Following the next elections, we'll be returning to the issue of whether you want a federal government. Are you going to recognise that the European Union is actually collapsing? Many people in the Netherlands are fed up with the European Union. What Commissioner Reding has said shows that they see a member state passport as an EU passport rather than an important sign of people's nationality. This elitist approach cannot go on. My party, the Party for Freedom, wants us to leave the Netherlands, and this debate is just going to strengthen our hand. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
For a blue card. Yes, please.
Mr. van der Stop, your name seems Dutch. How can you say this is something that concerns only each country and the national sovereignty when countries like mine, Portugal, are issuing what they call golden visas, possibly to criminals from other parts of the world, golden visas that are Schengen visas?
Thank you, President. It remains a prerogative of the individual member state to decide how it grants visas and residence permits, or indeed passports. What you're talking about are the golden visas issued by your own government. No doubt they were given to people who invested a lot of money. Let's be clear about this. If we're talking now about visas and passports for people who come as asylum seekers or refugees, you no doubt would have reacted in a very different way.
Thank you very much. And now I call Mrs. Metsola for 2 minutes.
President, we have worked hard to ensure Malta's place in the European Union. We are proud about this. We are proud to be Maltese and proud to be European. We are hard people and we work for our rights, and we know and respect our duties and obligations. This debate over the past weeks has become the main subject of controversy. The vast majority of Maltese people do not want this cash-for passport scheme. Those who, like me, spoke against this scheme have been labelled traitors. We are one people, a people of calibre, and this scheme is not representative of us. It should never have come to this, but as a representative of the Maltese people, I cannot sit by and say nothing. It is my duty to speak out, and no political attack will stop me. We are talking here about the outright sale of citizenship with almost with no strings attached and almost without the need even for these people to step in the country, but with all the benefits attached to citizenship. This is also our parliament, the parliament of the Maltese, and we are directly elected by our citizens to represent them. Our rights are not for sale. The sale of citizenship devalues its worth, and it is also an impingement of the rights of each and every one of us. As Vice President Reding said, to be a citizen of a country means that there must be a strong and deep bond with that country. And so now, apparently, a person can become a European and a Maltese citizen without this bond with the EU. This goes against trust and solidarity, which are the building blocks of the EU. We are not diluting member states' sovereignty. It is because we believe in the European project that we want a Europe built on the respect of strong rights. I would like once again to ask for consensus. We are still in time to address this. Thank you.
Mr. Mello should like to have a question to you. Are you ready to answer? I suppose yes, please, Mr. Mello.
Thank you, President. The honourable member will have heard a regrettable confusion between the golden visa and authorisation of residence permits for the purpose of investment in Portugal. I think it's shameful that those be confused. If you don't understand what's going on in Malta, you can hardly understand what's going on in Portugal, where you need 3 investments of menus or create a certain number of jobs. There has to be some real palpable investment. I'm not sure that a Maltese member is best placed to draw such a distinction. Thank you.
It is not exactly a very good question to a concrete, but please try to answer.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Sir Miller, for his question. The title of this resolution is about the sale of citizenship. The sale of Maltese citizenship and the scheme which is being proposed by the socialist government is not limited, and there is no genuine bond or link with investment, and it was on this subject that I spoke, and it is on this that the resolution we will be voting on tomorrow actually focuses on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker, says the President, is Mr. Kuskieri for 1.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Among other things, this motion that we have in front of us speaks about European values. Yes, we are speaking about these principal values that unite us as Europeans. We speak about solidarity, reciprocal solidarity between member states. We speak about respect for sovereignty of all member states in things that are of national competence. We need to concentrate on the real principle and real meaning of citizenship, and this in order to avoid any prejudice against one particular member state. This requires of us maturity and seriousness, and therefore let us be prudent. It is not right that we concentrate on one member state. If this happens, the game becomes dangerous and it won't focus on common interests in Europe. We would only be creating a precedent on the sovereignty of one member state. As Europeans, we have to choose between European economy that opens itself out on the world or an internal and limited economy. We need to have the courage and open the doors to those who want to invest in Europe, a way of creating jobs. It is a satisfaction to see a country such as Malta to have success in its economy without burdening taxpayers. As a country in Europe, Malta believes in sincere solidarity. We show this, and we continue to show this in immigration. We have always done our duty. We continue to do our duty, but let us not avoid opportunities that bring with them opportunity, and this in the context of European values. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Weber.
Colleagues, how can I explain to my Romanian citizens who are outside the Schengen zone, how can I explain to them that somebody from outside the Schengen zone, from outside the EU, can buy EU citizenship and thus have access to the Schengen zone? I have no explanation. It's unacceptable. Instead of criticizing the sale of Maltese citizenship, some European politicians are distracting attention by criticizing Romania for granting citizenship to the citizens of the Republic of Moldova. It's not Romania and the Republic of Moldova that are the problem, or indeed their historical ties. It's the sale of EU citizenship by other countries.
Thank you very much. It is also very difficult to explain why Romania is outside of Schengen, but that's another debate. The next speaker is Madame Muscardini.
Grazie Presidente. La cittadinanza europea.
Thank you, President. European citizenship is closely bound up with national citizenship. You can't have the one without the other. And this is a step forward on the process of building Europe. But European citizenship is not something autonomous. You can't have it unless you're a citizen of an EU member state. Today, it's too easy to acquire citizenship of an individual country and thereby European citizenship. You have asylum applicants facing problems at acquiring residence permits, but if they do, they can move and create economic problems. We can't have passports becoming a commodity which are being bought and sold. The member states need transparent rules which will protect us from the risk of creating new opportunities for criminal organizations and terrorists. We don't want any further disparities between the rich and the poor to grow.
Thank you. And the next speaker for 2 minutes is Mr. Coelho.
Thank you, President. Commissioner, honourable members. European citizenship is a fundamental principle, particularly for those who believe in a Europe of citizens and will not accept a Europe which is confined to capital and goods. European citizenship developed in such a way that it provides real, palpable rights, and it helps create a feeling of belonging to the European Union and strengthening the European identity. We know that there's no autonomous way of acquiring Union citizenship other than obtaining the citizenship of a given member state. We know that each member state has its own rules for granting citizenship, but that should not include the sale of European citizenship. And that is the content of the scheme devised by the Maltese government in selling citizenship. Many member states have quite legitimately adopted measures to attract foreign investment, making it easier to acquire residence permits, which allow the holders to live in that member state and move for a maximum of 3 months within the territories of other Schengen countries without establishing a residence there or working in that other member state. And clearly this does not grant access to European citizenship. That's why the Maltese government's scheme is trying to bring in, without even a need for residence or a genuine link with the country, this citizenship, the financial criterion being the only one. So I agree, Mrs. Redding, when you say that rights cannot be traded in. Rights are not something you buy, something that you recognise, and they demand responsibility. What Malta is doing is going to have a negative impact on European citizenship. I call on the Commission to take the necessary initiatives under Article 4(3) of the EU Treaty to protect European citizenship, which is not for sale.
Are you ready to answer, Mr. Coelho? Are you ready to answer? Yes? Please.
Sr. Deputado Carlos Coelho.
Carlos Coelho, can you confirm to our colleagues that in Portugal too, as was referred to, there is a system for acquiring citizenship that requires you to have lived 7 to 10 years in the country and a decision from the Minister of Internal Administration. This is an indirect means of acquiring citizenship. The method referred to, which has been in Portugal since last year, is an indirect means of selling the citizenship too.
Sr. Presidente, a Sra. Deputada Ana Gomes não tem razão.
President, Ana Gomes is wrong, and she knows she's wrong. All countries have systems for granting citizenship, and the system in Portugal is very similar to that in virtually all other European countries. There's no privilege clause for those carrying out investments. In other words, if you have a foreign investor or a foreign migrant, the rules are exactly the same when it comes to acquiring Portuguese nationality. So that accusation is unfounded, and you should apologise for it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We continue the debate on Malta. The next speaker in 1.5 minutes, Mr. Weidenholzer.
Herr Präsident.
Thank you very much, President. Granting citizenship is obviously something that falls within the remit of the nation states. After all, you're talking about the composition of a nation. Generally speaking, you tend to be born into that community. But more and more frequently, you might actually become naturalized. You would do so normally on the basis of long-term residency. Member states have also made it possible for people to acquire citizenship because they have provided some service to the country. So I suppose it makes sense to have different approaches in our different member states, different conditions under which membership or citizenship can be granted. That being said, we should give some thought to this matter, because the citizenship of a country also gives rise to the citizenship of the EU. So you have lots of other rights which are acquired automatically, and therefore this is a matter of European interest. I therefore welcome the debate. I don't think it should really deal with just one specific case ad hoc. I think we should have a general debate. Let us discuss this. The fact that people are granted citizenship, is this something that is increasingly perceived as a political tool? Is it something important vis-à-vis neighbouring states? And there's also the issue of sale of citizenship. That is something that we should call into question. I don't think it's acceptable for countries to sell their citizenship. I don't think the Union should put up with this. We shouldn't tolerate this kind of practice, because really it's a way of circumventing the rules of the Schengen area. And it also means that citizenship really depends on the wealth or income of the applicant, and that is unacceptable under any circumstance. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Mr. Casa in 2 minutes.
Thank you, President. We have a discussion this afternoon which is not a discussion against the Maltese people. It is not a discussion against the Maltese government. It is instead a discussion which talks about the scheme that is about to be introduced in my country. Malta is a European member state now. We are part of the Eurozone, of the Schengen area, and we are proud also with the obligations that we have towards the EU and also the responsibilities that come with it. We do not want, therefore, to put us in a bad light because of this bad scheme. I want, when a Maltese person comes to your country with a Maltese passport, you trust that person to enter your country and you do not suspect a holder of a Maltese passport. And so I am saying here today that we are still in time. The Maltese government should listen to what's being said here. I enjoyed hearing what the colleagues said from the Green Party, from the Socialist Party, from the EPP. I call on the Maltese government to listen to these voices and to change the scheme, because I agree with everything that's been said here today. especially also with my colleague Gomez, who said that Maltese citizenship is not for sale. Let us find common ground, common rules to ensure that no government today nor tomorrow would be able to sell European citizenship in this way. Let us have guidelines, let us see what should be done so that together we can see how best to defend European citizenship. And there should be a true link, a true connection and bond with a country so that you may be able to be given a passport. If you trust me, if you trust Malta and Gozo with the key to your country, which is also your home and my home, then I cannot just give this key out to anybody without your permission, without the permission of the Council, without the permission of the Commission. I'm sorry that my country did not communicate with the Commission, with the Member States, nor with this Parliament, but this is a scheme, and I am not talking here against my country nor the Maltese people. Thank you.
Mr. Cuschieri has a question to you. Are you ready to answer? Yes? Yes, please.
Grazie, Sir President. Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry. I have a question for the colleague from the same country, but I have to ask this question because he has talked about consent about this scheme. He is saying that the socialist government of Malta, under the leadership of Mr. Muscat, has not only made a consultation with all countries, but also with the party of the opposition, and Mr. David Casa represents that party here. That is what happened, actually.
I didn't recognize the question, but maybe you will be able to answer.
President, I have spoken, I have heard Mrs. Reding, the Commissioner, who has declared that she knows about no consultation with the Commission or with the Member States. I would ask my colleague from the Socialist Party to make sure that what he says is based on facts. Thank you.
Those who are interested to raise the blue card to have a clear question. It is possible to have a clear answer, otherwise we will just lose our time. But now we have Madame Boskoert in 1 minute.
Thank you, President. Nationality for sale, residence permits for sale. Does the Member States really want to have a situation where a rich Russian can come along and buy citizenship, but a poor refugee on a boat is turned back? How can we justify that we are denying freedom of movement to people who have a right to it as EU citizens, whereas at another counter we are simply exchanging passports for money? I'm very worried about this. Of course, Member States decide themselves on access to their nationality, but it has a direct impact on the other Member States. At the same time, it is a ticket into the other Member States. We have agreed that with each other. Getting nationality must depend on clear and objective criteria, not on how fat your wallet is. What is the Council going to do to get a better agreement here to ensure that the Member States act responsibly, and how can the European Commission provide assistance in this?
Thank you very much. The next speaker in 2 minutes, Van der Kamp. Mr. Van der Kamp.
Thank you, President. Nationality, I quite agree with Mrs. Reding, should not be for sale. It's a very strange idea that you should be able to buy a passport. As politicians, I think we should take nationality seriously. And we shouldn't play into the hands of populists by doing this kind of thing. Passports are not for sale. And we all know, and I would say this to Mrs. Gomez, that of course there are countries who have investment rules which allow you to have a temporary residence permit. A lot of countries in the EU do this, but there is a difference between a temporary residence permit, which is linked to certain conditions, and the simple sale of nationality, which we are now threatened with in Malta. President, the way in which this has happened in Malta is very strange. First of all, we didn't hear anything about it. It was all secret. There were no public lists. Now we know a little bit more about the conditions set down by the Social Democrat government. But the fact that you don't actually have to be resident in Malta is extremely strange. You buy a passport in Valletta and you can actually establish your residence in Berlin and Paris. This is obviously nothing to do with nationality. Then, President, when it comes to cooperation in the European Union, well, that brings with it obligations as well. In Article 4 of the treaty, it says that the member states will work together in a professional and trustworthy way. We don't want people going it alone in this kind of sensitive area. And then finally, President, I would say I agree with my colleague Jan Mulder from the ALDE group. I think it would be advisable for the Commission to have harmonization of the conditions in Europe and to make it quite transparent what the conditions are for temporary residence permits granted to investors.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Mr. Scurria, and he has 2 minutes.
Grazie Presidente. Il tema della cittadinanza.
Thank you, President. Citizenship has always been a very hot topic. In many countries it's often linked to the question of immigration. And when you talk about how to acquire citizenship by birth or whether you become a citizen by remaining on the territory of a state for a time, there's the old question of jus soli or jus sanguinis. But one never stops being surprised. So now we discover that there is a jus pecuniae, that you can become a citizen of a state by paying for it. So a thing that normally is achieved by identity or by passion or by desire to belong, now the socialist government of Malta has told us that citizenship is to be bought and sold. It's a fee you pay for getting a passport, as if it were a little stamp that you put on it. So I agree with Commissioner Reding when I say no to this. We would ask the Maltese government to step back from this, as no right can be marketed. We've made a great effort to build our national states, often at the cost of great sacrifice, often personal sacrifice. It's taken us decades to build up the European project. Were we wasting all our time? Should we just have put it out to tender, the right to citizenship? I think the history behind this shows that we're on the right track. Let's not open up the door to not just something that's unknown, but something that's a legal monster that could undermine our states.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Mr. Karins in 2 minutes.
Mr. Chair, dear colleagues, in Europe we always are speaking about the need for new jobs and growth. Jobs and growth. But the question is, where will it all come from? Of course, investments are needed, because without the investment, nothing will happen. Now, another question, how do we attract these investors? There are countries in Europe, and not a small number of those, that offer to these potential investors, let's say, a carrot to invest in an EU member state, in exchange providing them temporary, I stress the word temporary, permit of residence against a specific amount to be invested. They receive the right to stay in a EU member state. After that term expires, they cannot stay. This praxis is not a problem. Difficulties are faced by countries like Malta, where under the pretense of attracting investments, they are actually selling citizenship. And it is not the issue with the amount, if it's big enough or not, but the point is that this has not a temporary nature in it. As soon as you sell the citizenship, it's It's all done. You cannot change it. So I would like to discriminate between two types of attracting investments. One of them is through temporary permits of residence, where I don't see the problem, while a completely different issue here, as done by the government of Malta, is actually selling the citizenship, which to my mind is not something we can support. We cannot sell citizenship in Europe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Mr. Stier. He has a minute and a half.
Thank you, Chair. Although Mrs. Reding is not here, I would like to thank her for a very clear message that she sent to us all. I believe that the Council should send the same message. Indeed, EU citizenship should not be up for sale. Of course, there will always be people who will be claiming that money can buy everything and that we should settle for that. Unfortunately, the program of the Maltese government sends this kind of message. However, this brings about the whole range of questions. Is money really a decisive factor when it comes to EU citizenship? Can we just offer it for sale to foreign millionaires just to make sure that there is the inflow of funds into the state budget? And what is going to happen to other member states? Is this something that is within the competence of the sovereign member states of the European Union? Yes, of course it is, but on the other hand, it can have consequences for all other member states of the European Union. Here we do not just speak about selling the citizenship of one member state. At the same time, these people will be able to move freely around the European Union and will not, for example, come against obstacles that Croatian citizens, for example, still have when it comes to the Schengen zone. We shouldn't really try to identify citizenship with investors that are ready to make greenfield investments. Of course, there are states that have similar programs, but these are different programs. They are not the kind that we see in Malta, and this one...
Thank you. Mr. Boudou is next. He also has a minute and a half.
Thank you. I would like to express my disapproval towards this Maltese law that allows for non-EU citizens to get the EU citizens after paying for it. I'm the citizen of a member state that wishes for years to become part of the Schengen area, and this has not happened even if my country has met all technical requirements. So 30 million EU citizens, Romanians and Bulgarians, cannot travel without border controls, but any Russian, Chinese citizen, gangster or oligarch could do that without any hindrance if these people have a huge bank account. This is something that is very unjust. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kelly is the next speaker.
This debate reminds me of a song about my own beautiful place, Killarney, and it goes like this. An American landed on Erin's Green Isle. He looked at Killarney and said with a smile, "How can I buy this beautiful place? How can I buy Killarney?" And he goes on to say that if he had all the money in the world, he couldn't buy Killarney. But now an American or someone like him can actually buy Malta, or at least Maltese citizenship, without having any connection with the country. This goes against all principles of what we understand of citizenship and also principles of equality. It wouldn't be of major concern to us if Malta wasn't part of the European Union, but Maltese citizenship equates to European Union citizenship. If you go through any airport in the European Union, there will be two lines, one for all passports, one for EU citizens. And there is no distinction made between the 28 member states. I think this goes against everything we stand for, and I commend particularly Commissioner Reding for her forthright and courageous comments. We have to exert as much pressure as we can on the Maltese to stop this ridiculous proposal. It is making a laughingstock of citizens, and particularly, I think, saying that some people are born equal but others are more equal than others, and the rich will always dominate. It's a disgrace. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And now we will embark on the Catch the Eye procedure. I have received 12 requests for the floor, and I cannot accommodate any more. Altogether, I can allow 8 speakers to speak. First, Mr. Díaz de Mera.
Presidente, el programa del gobierno.
Well, the program of the Maltese government to attract investment in exchange for citizens is unacceptable. First of all, from the point of view of the security of citizens in Europe, and to open up the door to money laundering and criminality. Secondly, in the area of the EU, it would mean access to European citizenship with all rights and everything that supposes undermining existing rules and confidence among member states. And it would also mean recognizing that the right to citizenship is a good which can be bought and sold. Now, no member state can alone undermine the civil codes of the other 27, and the community rights follow them. Thank you very much.
Köszönöm szépen.
Thank you very much. Mr. Atal Montaro is next.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am going to speak in English as Madam Reding, the Commissioner, chose that language to address us. First of all, I followed her with very keen interests. Why? Because she made a legal argument. If you take away all the political rhetoric, you will realize that her main items of objection are legal. She accepted the fact that citizenship is a national part of the national jurisdiction. But she also said that according to the Maastricht Treaty, and she is right, there has to be a direct link. In other words, the objection is not whether money is paid or not. The objection is whether there is a direct link or not. So let us crystallize the problem and not try and make a scapegoat of the smallest country in the European Union.
Asszony következik.
Thank you very much. The next speaker.
Slažem se da svaka država članica.
Yes, I agree that every member state has a sovereign right to decide the citizenship obtaining conditions and that the institutions of the European Union have no right to interfere there. However, a membership within the Schengen area also means great responsibility and obligations, especially for the member states at the external borders. The decisions of particular member states in the area of citizenship obtaining become the potential problem of all members of the zone, so that the unilateral moves should not be desirable here. For that reason, I believe that just as every member state has a sovereign right to decide on whom to offer citizenship, the other member states also should have a sovereign right to limit access to the citizens of those member states who practice a sale of citizenship. Considering several member states have announced this type of practice, I think that it would be opportune to introduce certain protection mechanisms within the Schengen instrument, which would enable the introduction of limitations for the citizenship trading member states. Thank you very much.
Köszönöm szépen, most Murphy úr.
Thank you very much. Mr. Murphy is next.
Thank you, President. If you are super rich and you need an EU passport and you want some good value for money, well, we have some bargains here for you. We have Malta, €650,000, no strings attached. But Malta, of course, is not alone. We have Charitable Ireland, €500,000 investment in a public project in return for a guaranteed residency permit. Cyprus, €3 million an investment. Britain, applicants assessed on the basis of a £1 million investment in the UK. It's appalling, it's disgraceful, it's outrageous, but it's not altogether that surprising, because we live in a Europe that's dominated by the 1% at the cost of the 99%. It is more outrageous because it happens at precisely the same time that we have the disgraceful, racist scaremongering by many parties of the establishment across Europe against Romanians and Bulgarians. It is disgraceful when you contrast the practice of keeping out non-Europeans that has cost the lives of 20,000 people from the southern borders. This is the tale of two Europes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Paska is next.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner, the sale of Maltese and also European citizenship to third country nationals introduced by the Maltese administration is a less sophisticated form of similar measures by some other countries that offer residence permits for some trade investments, etc. Although the decisions on state citizenship are exclusively in the competence of the member states, there are certain controversial aspects in Maltese legislation. Malta has become the first country to have simply put a price tag on the European citizenship, to market it and to make profit on the rights that 28 member states committed to grant to European citizens. So from the point of other member states, this act by the Maltese administration is not neutral, because other member states will have to recognize and grant the rights to the buyers of Maltese passports, so the rights to move freely, settle, etc. So that's why, colleagues, I am convinced that this kind of trading with European citizenship has to be stopped. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Mr. Mulder.
Der lockere Umgang mit Einbürgerungen.
This system of selling citizenship has long been a problem. Some member states are turning themselves into back doors into the European Union. What we have seen already is a system to improve Romanian public finances, but the Maltese system is entirely new. This is a very dubious business model. As long as immigration is possible and criminal capital can be used to pay for it, then it will be childishly easy to achieve residence. It's interesting that Commissioner Reding said that anybody can get a passport who has a real connection with the country. If that had really been the principle up until now, we wouldn't have been requiring people, for example, to learn languages. This is a system for ending the...
Thank you very much. Next is Mr. Landsbergis.
Thank you, Mr. President. The issue debated now is difficult even to understand and define in correct terms. Practices with European citizenship sold and bought for money is entirely compromising all the EU. That's one more blow on union and new fuel for Eurosceptics. Union of values, what we used to say. Stop kidding in such a situation. Citizenship in the Union proposed for everybody from any non-democracy or anti-democracy who has only money for a bribe. What if some say it's nothing to do due to responsibilities of member state? I don't think so. We at least should to kindly ask Malta to denounce this step, to denounce such citizenship as moral mistake of anti-European content, and give the money got as bribe back to such a client. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The last speaker is Mrs. Meze.
Os senhores deputados Carlos Coelho e Nuno Melo.
Mr. Coelho and Mr. Nuno have only to go to the ISAB site or to any Portuguese travel, any Portuguese estate agency.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will not discuss the merit of the case,
because I do not agree that decision of the Maltese Parliament, elected in a democratic fashion, is being scrutinized in another parliament. This is an internal question. Dr. Simon Busuttil had actually said himself that this parliament would go into a difficult precedent when it interferes in something which is of the competence of the country. Citizenship is a sacrosanct right of every country. The methodology and the reason why this is being given has nothing to do with this with the competence of this parliament. So why are we debating this now when other member states have similar schemes? How come nobody has put the questions at the time? Why are we picking on Malta, the smallest member state? Malta is the smallest member state, but it has the same rights as other member states. Therefore, it is not right that it is being attacked on an attack on its sovereignty. Whoever instigated this debate, we have to remember the fact that Malta is no longer a colony. And who is trying to humiliate Malta for partisan politics should really be ashamed of himself.
Dear colleagues, I know everybody is very ambitious and many people would like to talk, but I would like to remind you of an opportunity. You can also submit your speeches in writing. Legally, it would be possible for me to allow for blue card questions, but I am compelled to restrict the number of catch the eye contributions, so we have no time for blue cards, unfortunately. Now I would like to give the floor to Commissioner Füle. He's been with us since the beginning of this meeting, even when Viviane Reding was sitting in the Commission's benches. Now I'll give the floor to Commissioner Füle.
Have a point of order? It's a point of order?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Em português, Sr. Presidente.
In Portuguese, Mr. President, if you'll allow me, I just wanted to say, if the rules of procedure of this House give rights, which then the Bureau can arbitrarily take away, then there's no point in having those rights at all. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I've asked a number of times to speak, and I've not been allowed to speak in this debate.
Yeah, you have opportunities and options to speak about many things, but you do not have a right to complain about the way the meeting is conducted. The catch the eye is an opportunity, it's not a right to speak. I have to give the floor to 5 people, or I can give the floor to 5 people, and I have given the floor to 8 people altogether, so there are no rights curtailed here. I had a point of order because at the beginning of the debate, when you mentioned the reason why we're having this debate, you said that this is a debate about Malta, but in actual fact this is a debate about citizenship. This is why I want to make it clear what you have said. This is why I have this point of order, because I also wanted to have a chance to speak and I wasn't given the chance to do so. Therefore, I wanted to make this thing clear that this is a debate about citizenship, that there is no problem. We want a healthy debate on citizenship in European Union, whilst keeping in mind that there is national sovereignty, but we cannot pick on a country and isolate it, because there are other countries which have similar schemes and initiatives. Therefore, Mr. President, I would like to urge this House, first of all, to recognize the fact that this is a debate on citizenship, and secondly, I appeal to this House so that it undertakes a reasonable approach on all that pertains to this subject. Thank you.
Madam, you are right that the title of the debate is on the citizenship. I fully agree with you. But naturally, you know better than me that what is behind, that is Malta. I fully agree that it's not nice to put one country, only one country, into the analysis. But at this stage, we are here, and finally, I really give the floor to Mr. Füle in the name of the Commission. No.
Köszönöm szépen. Mr.
Yes, please.
My honor, porque o deputado
Are you
Carlos
interested
Coelho
that we will hear you?
Yeah.
Please give the mic.
Mr. Carlos Coelho induced the idea that I had misled knowingly this House. It's not the fact, and I just wanted to say that any immobiliary agency, real estate agency,
But it is not a point of order.
to check what I have said, that nationality, Portuguese nationality, is obtained after 5 years of residence of 35 days all over, and in the 6 years that nationality can be granted. And if Commissioner Reding is so against it, please tell the Troika that is in Portugal and that allowed this system to be implemented.
Thank you, Mr. Füle. I strongly hope that is really the floor is yours.
Köszönöm szépen. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Honourable members, also on behalf of Viviane Reding, who had to leave unexpectedly earlier than she thought, I would like to thank you for your contributions to this debate. Your contributions highlight the growing importance of these questions in a European Union in which national decisions are in many instances no longer neutral vis-à-vis other member states and the European Union as a whole. The European Union citizenship implies a stakeholding with the Union and depends on a person's ties with Europe and its member states. And talking about the member states, you know that my area of responsibility is enlargement, a neighbourhood. And I have to confess that in the area of enlargement, I have already faced the issue when the candidate country was about to adopt the similar arrangement. And my line at that time was very clear. A, responsibility of the member states once you become. But second, you have to be aware that such a decision has a clearly the European Union dimension, and that this issue needs to be addressed in the spirit of the European Union values. Honourable members, we have taken on board what was said here today and what was expressed in European Parliament resolutions, and we will continue to be attentive to this issue. And listening to this debate, on behalf of Viviane Reding, I would like to confirm that the European Commission will be helpful to address this important issue within the treaties, through the debate in which we will address the differences between the citizenship on one side and the residence permit on the other side, and the debate which will in no way question the prerogative of member states or dilute the member states' sovereignty. Thank you very much.
Köszönöm szépen. És most a tanács nevében.
Thank you very much. And now, Minister Kurkulas on behalf of the Council.
President and honourable members, I would like to thank the members of the Parliament for this debate, this interesting debate, and I have taken good note of the concerns and the strong feelings expressed on this issue, and as I said in my opening remarks, I will certainly ensure that the Council is fully informed of your concerns. However, as I also said at the outset, the Council has not discussed the specific issue which is the subject of this debate and has certainly not taken a view on it, for the reasons which I have already explained. It is for the Member States individually to lay down their own rules governing nationality. There is no harmonisation of national legislation in this area. However, Member States must ensure that their domestic legislation fully respects EU law. If there is any suggestion that this is not the case, that is a matter for the Commission, which is the institution responsible for ensuring the respect for EU legislation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. 6 draft resolutions have been submitted. With me, this is the end of the debate. We are going to vote on this tomorrow at 12 o'clock. Let's jump to the next item on the agenda, joint debate on the progress reports on the Balkans, statement by the Commission and the Council on Serbia and Kosovo. The first speaker, of course, is going to be Mr. Kurkulas on behalf of the Council.
Thank you very much. It is very appropriate that we have this opportunity to discuss the positive developments in both Serbia and Kosovo in 2013. I should like, however, to begin by saying a few words more generally about the enlargement agenda for this semester. The Presidency Greece has always been a strong advocate of EU enlargement. Our intention over the coming months is to promote the improvement of the interconnection of the EU and enlargement countries in key sectors, an idea presented by the Commission in 2013 in the enlargement package. The aim is to contribute to the European integration of enlargement countries in concrete terms and to have a positive impact on the lives of their citizens. I am aware of the strong support which this Parliament has given traditionally to enlargement and very much appreciate the active engagement and constructive contribution of members to both enlargement policy as a whole and more specifically to enlargement perspective of the Western Balkans. Our overall enlargement policy, to which I know this Parliament is fully committed, has been instrumental to these developments. I would like to particularly to thank the rapporteurs Ulrike Lunacek and Jelko Kacin for their valuable contribution in highlighting both the successes and challenges which remain for Serbia and Kosovo. No one can doubt that Serbia and Kosovo have both demonstrated a continuing commitment to sustained progress in normalising their relations. Through a process of dialogue and negotiation, they have been able to deliver results which would have appeared impossible just a few years ago. I would particularly like to commend both Prime Ministers, Mr. Thaçi and Mr. Dacic, for their efforts and commitment to this process. I would also like to express our gratitude to High Representative Catherine Ashton for her facilitation efforts, as well as to Commissioner Füle. We very much welcome the decision to open accession negotiations with Serbia. Both this and the ongoing negotiations on the Stabilisation and Association Agreement with Kosovo are clear evidence of the extent to which both parties are fully engaged in the process of normalising relations. In April 2013, A first agreement of principles governing the normalisation of relations was achieved. This was followed up in May by an implementation plan. Another milestone was successfully reached in November-December last year, when local elections were organised in Kosovo, including in the northern municipalities. The efficient work on the ground has meant that many old structures have been dismantled and integration into Kosovo structures is well underway. Both parties have also delivered on the domestic EU agenda. In a number of areas, Serbia has continued to prepare for the next important phase of its relations with the EU. The reform agenda, particularly in the area of rule of law, gained momentum throughout 2013, and some progress was made towards establishing a functioning market economy. Furthermore, Serbia has continued to align its legislation with EU legislation and has made a positive contribution to regional cooperation. The Stabilisation and Association Agreement